All right. Well, enough with college hoops. We got plenty of NBA action getting ready to go to here, as we only have about 7-8 games left for many of these teams jockeying for position in the playoffs, and some really good news maybe for one team in the East. We'll see what these guys think about here as we welcome in on the NBA Afternoon Update. It is Bryan Power, like a bad rash. Just can't get rid of him. Here he is again, as well as Double R, 1L. Exactly, Merril. They make your cream for that. Double R, 1L, Steve Merril in the house. Gentlemen, welcome in. It is always a pleasure to see you. Shout out also to those of you guys joining us via Instagram in the chat room there. Happy April 1st to you. And, of course, the lunatics there on YouTube as well as X. And those of you that are maybe sitting on the toilet watching us on YouTube Shorts, we appreciate you very much here, because that's where I would be if I didn't have to sit in this chair. Gentlemen, we got some NBA action here tonight across the board, and we do have obviously some line movement, but I want to get you what the poll question is here today. And I'm going to be interested to see what the chat rooms think about this also. We did just learn, of course, that the Sixers are getting Joel Embiid back. In all likelihood, tomorrow is what they are anticipating that he'll be back. So there are an awful lot of Sixer fans that think with the return of Joel Embiid, this team's a threat in the East. So my question is, and the poll question for those of you joining us in the chat rooms is very simply here. Does the return of Joel Embiid make the Sixers a real threat in the Eastern Conference? It's two choices, hell yes or hell no. Some people think, though, they're buying into Joel Embiid, who had only played, 35, 36 games or has missed the last 35 and 36. He has not. It feels like been on the court forever, BP. So are you buying that Joel Embiid back makes this – we ought to look at this in a different lens because it makes him and that Sixers team a different ballgame?
Well, I think the big question, who is the second best team in the East? With Embiid, can the Sixers be the second best team in the East? Yeah, sure they can. But, I mean, I look and I think most of us would concur there. It is Boston versus the field in the Eastern Conference, unless if the Celtics had some sort of unprecedented meltdown or a series where they just couldn't knock down shots. They are by far the deserved favorite in the Eastern Conference. My goodness, they have an 11-game lead over the rest of the field. They've clinched everything, the Celtics have. But if the Sixers, I don't know, let's say they finish 6th or 7th. 6 is obviously ideal because you avoid the play-in tournament, but you're on the opposite side of the bracket from Boston. Could they get to a conference final with Embiid? If the matchups broke right? Absolutely, they could, because I don't know. I mean, I think the really interesting question we're all going to have to ask, and maybe it's going to be based on matchups, is who is the second best team in the East entering this thing behind Boston, who I think we would all agree is the presumed favorite. With Embiid, the Sixers are absolutely in that discussion. Here in Cleveland, I can tell you the Cavs are a low-ceiling team. I don't trust the Cavs. We saw what happened to them in the playoffs last year. The Bucks don't play defense. The Knicks, they are not healthy. Orlando and Indiana are younger teams that haven't done anything before. So, yeah, I would say with Embiid, the Sixers absolutely can be the second best team. But there's a big gap between number 2 and number 1 in this conference.
Yeah, no, there absolutely is. And guys, go ahead and drop in your answer to that poll question there. How many of you Big Daddy's already like, oh, hell no. Absolutely not. Am I buying Embiid being in good enough shape to affect anything except maybe the scale? And I'm with you there, Big Daddy. I tend to believe it's going to be blown out of proportion, but that could mean great things for us, Merril, because, hey, Embiid's going to show up. Sixer fans and people are going to expect the world, but chances are we might, in fact, get ourselves maybe a few better lines along the way there when it comes to Sixer games. We have 6 games on tap here tonight in the NBA, and we've got 1, 2, 3 of them, half of them really double-digit lines here, and we'll start up at the top with the Portland Trailblazers and the Orlando Magic in this one. Orlando, for the most part, looking at the current injury report, guys, not seeing anything of any concern. All healthy there, of course. Portland is like bingo. G3, Matisse Thybulle, yeah, no, he's not in either. You go down a list here. No Simons, no Brogdon, no Sharp, no Roger, no Rerun, and no Rent here, people. But we have seen this go from 208 to 210.5 for a total. I am seeing 16.5s across the board. This may very well, having heard from the Contrarian Gods earlier, this may very well, Merrill, have been a game the Contrarian Gods said, wait, we're laying how many with Orlando here tonight? What are you thinking about this one?
First of all, I love the what's happening reference with Roger and Rerun.
Yes.
Nobody under 50 would understand that. So nobody watching the show probably appreciated that. But
baby.
you and I grew up with that.
Nick at night.
Best line ever in that show, Joe. And I use this to the day. The younger sister was D, and the mom goes, D, the only D's I better see on that report card are in your name. I still use that line. I love that one. But it's happening, Roger and Rerun. God, memories when we got 3 TV stations getting home from school in the afternoon. Portland Trailblazers, as banged up as they come. I was on the show last week, and we talked about how double-digit favorites, final month of the season, do very well, especially road favorites. And Boston lost outright in that role as a 16-point favorite at Atlanta. But let's contrast the differences in those type of games. Boston doesn't have much to play for. They've already locked up the number 1 in the East, and they pretty much have locked up best record overall, whereas Atlanta is still in the playoff contention. They're in the play-in round right now. So it's not like that was a terrible team pulling that upset. The Blazers are not that type of team. They've lost 9 in a row straight up. They've only covered 3 of their last 9. The majority of those losses have been by double digits. They're decimated with injuries. Like you said, basically their entire starting lineup is not playing, and they were mediocre to start with that lineup. And the Orlando Magic on the other side have been the most profitable NBA team against the point spread for a couple years now. Teams that are up and coming like Orlando usually feast on weaker opponents. We talked about that last week on the show as well when you, Teddy, and I did the Friday edition. And you look at the Magic, they lost those games to the Knicks and Pacers after 5 straight wins and covers, came right back, won 5 in a row straight up in ATS against mostly bottom feeders, then lost to the Kings, the Warriors, the Clippers, 0-3 straight up ATS. And then what did they do on Saturday? They bounced back and beat the lowly Memphis Grizzlies by 30. There's only one way to play this game, and it's Orlando. Yes, it might not be a fully focused spot, but the Magic have not taken their foot off the throttle when facing bad teams, and the Portland Trailblazers right now are about as bad as they get.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt there. What are we looking at? 4th game, 7-game road trip here for Portland. And I think it's, I'm still laughing at what Miami did to them a couple of nights ago as well, with more than a 60-point win there. It was so bad, man. S. Warrior actually in the chat room got a chance to play the final 5 minutes of that game, BP. But what are you thinking here, BP? This is a big-ass number even for Orlando, though. Are we trusting them to get this done and win by margin? Oh, is this where I read the
love
lips?
Orlando in this game. Steve is
Orlando's
brilliant.
great.
All right, Gee, here we go. I try to minimize the noise by being a broadcast professional, and look what I do.
You minimized it all right. You didn't say nothing.
I didn't say a damn word, did I, Steve? All right.
Minimum.
I'll tell you what.
100% minimized.
On that note, the less said about the Portland Trailblazers last game, probably the better. As Joe mentioned, they lose by 60 to Miami. They gave up 142 to Miami. They were 13.5-point dogs in that game. Game before that, they were getting 11 at Atlanta. They lost by 14. That's not too bad. Game before that, they lost by 18 at Houston as 13.5-point dogs. So I'm with Steve. It's favored or pass because Orlando is trying to, I think a lot of times you have to ask yourself, how much do these teams care about seeding? Orlando, as we talked about early, a younger team. I think they would love to finish top 4 of the East, guys. They have a great home record. Right now they would be staring at if this regular season ended today, they would be facing the Knicks in the first round, but not have home court advantage. There's a 1-game difference in the standings right now. Orlando would love to flip that and finish in the top 4. And look, Portland, the starting lineup they're trotting out there tonight, guys, is, as you guys have mentioned, is horrific. I mean, these guys, they're getting outscored by a ridiculous amount. Orlando, what did they do to a terrible Memphis team? Steve alluded to this earlier. They held them to 0.73 points per possession last game. I don't think Portland's going to score points in this game. So Orlando, it's up to their level of motivation if they want to cover a number this big. I'm sure this is the biggest number they've laid all season. As a matter of fact, it is. So it's favorite or pass here. You can't bet Portland. What do they have to play?
Yeah, and right. And, well, Magic, you're right. I mean, Magic have a lot to play for here. I believe they trailed the Knicks by a game, if I'm not mistaken, for home court advantage there, at least in the first round. So Orlando is certainly going to take I expect Orlando to take this game pretty seriously and leave no doubt as they're going to be taking on the G League, not even G League. Maybe it's like an H League. Portland Trailblazers, because they are hot ass. That's exactly what they are. Big shout out to those of you joining us here. Don't forget, hit that thumbs up, that like button, and become part of the WagerTalk TV family, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. As we're going to take a look here and getting a little bit of a line move here in the Atlanta Hawks and Chicago Bulls right now. As we take a look at the injury report, we're seeing, what do we got? Caruso, shocker. Ayo DeSono, both probable on this one. Nobody else of any interest there, and the Bulls is out. Jalen Johnson has been made active for this game for the Hawks here, and Bufkin is the only other guy on the report, and he is listed as questionable. This was as high as 3. The Bulls laying 3.5 this morning. I'm now seeing 2s popping up. I'm also seeing the total drop from 223.5 down to 221, 221.5. We did watch the Bulls last night against Minnesota, who probably should have rested everyone. Oh, they pretty much did. But we did see them get a much needed win there. And listen, the Hawks are still battling here, but do we trust the Bulls on the second of a back-to-back to get this done here, laying points, BP?
This is an important game for both teams. Barring something unforeseen, this is going to be a play-in round matchup. This will be the 9 versus the 10 in the East. So these are the two teams. They'll have to win twice to get in the playoffs proper. Right now, the Bulls have home court advantage. They have a 1.5-game lead over the Hawks. So the Bulls would host the Hawks in the play-in round. Now, given how pathetic Atlanta's been against the spread at home, maybe that's not the worst thing for the Hawks. But I think, the Hawks who are 0-2 against the Bulls, they really, really, really need this game if they are to have any hope or if they have any desire of hosting that play-in game against the Bulls. A loss tonight for the Hawks would essentially hand the Bulls home court advantage for that 9 versus 10 matchup. You talk about the total dropping. Perhaps that's a case of, bettors feeling, hey, this is a rare late season game where two teams have interest. We're going to see a little bit of defense in this one. I would lean Atlanta in this game. Again, I think it's just so important to them. If they lose tonight, then they're going to Chicago for that first play-in game. No doubt.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't expect that here, though. I mean, but Merrill, it's good. I mean, this time of year, 7-8 games I think we've got left here on the card for a lot of these teams. The total is interesting, though, because that has dropped significantly from what we saw with the opening numbers last night. Potential playoff feel in this one here as these two teams continue to battle. I mean, it was 224 last night. We're getting 221s now here. Do you agree with that move?
Yeah, first of all, playoff games in general, about 2 to 3 points lower scoring on average. So if this is kind of a playoff intensity type game, that could apply. Let's remind the viewers on how this format works. Since 2021, we've done this 10-team format where the top 6 make it automatically. The 7th and 8th team, which is currently those 76ers you were talking about, Joe, sitting in 8th place, along with your Miami Heat in 7th, would play each other. The winner automatically gets the 7th seed, and then the loser of that 7-8 game gets one more chance and would play the winner of this 9-10 game, which is most likely going to be Chicago and Atlanta. In fact, it's not even close. Chicago's 4 games out of the 8th spot. Atlanta's 5.5 ahead of the 11th spot. So this is almost locked in. And the Bulls are a game and a half up. If the Bulls win this game tonight, they're going to probably host that game. So it is an important game for both teams just as far as where they play the one-and-done 9-10 game. And I believe that's on April 13th, I thought I saw, whatever date that would be. So we're a couple weeks away from that. So yeah, I mean, the under could be worth a look for that reason. We have seen sharp money coming on the under. It opened as high as 224, like you said, down to 221.5. With that recent injury report coming out, I did see one of the sharper offshores took a tick Chicago up to -2, -115. So it looks like maybe it's getting closer to hitting that opener of 2.5 once again. Got to point out Atlanta, first of all, a couple things. They're off 7 straight overs. They've been an over team at times this season. They're doing it once again with 7 straight overs. But talked about how good the Orlando Magic have been this year. Hawks are going down as one of the worst point spread teams in NBA history, especially for a team that might make the playoffs. They're still 20 games below 500, 27-47 against the number. And that's despite covering 5 of their last 8 and 8 of their last 12 overall. And they're still 20 games below 500. So we have started to get some value with Atlanta here in recent weeks against the spread. Just not sure if that applies tonight.
Yeah, this is an interesting game with these two teams, but at least they're battling and they haven't exactly thrown in the towel just yet, but give it time, and we'll see what happens here. The game of the night, which has a lot of people yelling and screaming, at least they were early today, and especially last night when the Phoenix Suns opened up as a favorite last night in some places there against the New Orleans Pelicans. And something tells me that, it wouldn't last long, and it didn't because now it's flipped. It is 1.5 to the Pelicans here now. The total also has come crashing down, 224.5. I'm seeing 222s, even 221.5 showing up here. It's the end of a 5-game road trip, I believe, for the Phoenix Suns here. New Orleans has had a rough go of it without Ingram, but good Lord. I mean, they played OKC. I think they played the Bucks. They played the Celtics. What do we do here, BP, with this game here tonight? A lot of people thought wrong team opened up as the favorite. Well, they're not a favorite, the Phoenix Suns, anymore. How much faith do we have in them to go on the road and handle this game with the Pelicans?
Yeah, I mean, mark me down for the consensus that Phoenix should not have opened as a road favorite here. They've lost outright 10 times, 10 out of 24 times as a road favorite this year. That just speaks to how overvalued they've been in the market. New Orleans, meanwhile, is just the opposite of Phoenix. They're undervalued. New Orleans has the 4th best point differential in the league this year. I was wrong on Saturday when I thought 6 was too much to be getting against a disinterested Boston team. Game certainly started well for the Pelicans, didn't it? They were up, I believe, 11 at the end of the first quarter, but Boston turned it on in the third quarter. It was too much for New Orleans. New Orleans, again, we have to ask ourselves, do they care about home court advantage in the first round? Because they're 2 games out of the 4 spot right now. If that's something that they care about, then yeah, absolutely. We should get a motivated performance here. Phoenix, I don't think they care where they finish. Even if they end up in the play-in tournament, I don't think they care. They just want to be healthy. They think in a playoff format, they can beat anybody in this conference. So to me, New Orleans, short number at home, I would consider them. They would be the side I lean to in this. And yes, they do have the 4th best point differential in the league, trailing only Boston, OKC, and Minnesota. They have a better point differential slightly than Denver, Joe, New Orleans. So New Orleans is a good basketball team that deserves more respect. Phoenix has consistently showed this year, guys, overvalued in the market.
Yeah, I agree there, Merrill. I mean, you get these teams. This is the end of a 5-game road trip here for Phoenix. They'll head back home. They're kind of running out of real estate here as far as playoff seeding goes and what's going to happen. But I think New Orleans, it's been a little rough week for them without Ingram. I don't know with that knee if they have any real idea when he might be coming back. So it's been a gauntlet of a schedule at this homestand for them. But, I mean, what part of Phoenix do we trust at all here in this spot?
Well, a couple of things with New Orleans. First of all, I've thought they've been an underrated team most of the season. That stat that Bryan just gave out about the 4th best point differential is pretty powerful because point differential, all things equal, is one of the better barometer in all sports to really, once you've played 70-some games against pretty much the same level of opponents since the NBA is all playing each other, that's a pretty good metric to look at. The other thing I like to look at as well is road record. And New Orleans has actually had a better road record this year than home. They're 21-15 at home, but they're 24-14 away. So I do think the Pelicans, if Ingram could get healthy and return with the playoffs, could remain an underrated team in that ultra-competitive Western Conference. Ingram's an interesting guy. If you look at the top 20 most efficient five-man rotations they've had this year with all the different pieces mixed in, he is in every one of the top 20 rotations for New Orleans. You might say, well, that's because he's one of the better players. Well, I think we'd all agree Zion Williamson's the best player. He's only in 3 of the top 5 most efficient five-man rotations. So it's incredible to see a guy in all 20. Yet what's interesting about Ingram, on or off the court, there's been hardly any difference in field goal shooting. They're a little bit weaker. Points per 100 possessions is identical. Where there's a big difference without Ingram is actually on the defensive end. They're better defensively without him, which is something a lot of people don't look at. They hold their opponents to almost 3 percentage points lower shooting on average. And per 100 possessions, they allow almost 3.5 points less. And guess what? The last game he played was on the 21st of March. That game went over. They're now 4-1 under the last 5 games without him in the lineup. So I think the under remains an underrated play, no pun intended, without Ingram. I'd look at the under tonight with this game between the Suns and Pelicans at 8 o'clock Eastern.
All right, looking at the under there. Titan CT asking a quality question about how much did KD smoke last night. It's a good question. It's one that you should absolutely consider before making a play in this game. I agree 100% there. Big shout out to Have in the house. Los Pablo here, as well as Rick Parker, Big Daddy, and the crew. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you could. We'd appreciate it. Quick look at that poll question here today regarding will the return of Joel Embiid make the Sixers a real threat in the Eastern Conference? 63% saying hell yes, 37% saying hell no. So Embiid could be a difference maker here, according to some people, when he returns as early as tomorrow, I believe, is when they think he might get back here. All right, one other game that seems to be on the move here is interesting, and it's involving one of the double-digit games here between the Brooklyn Nets and the Indiana Pacers here, who are still battling, obviously. And I am not seeing, Cameron Johnson out for Brooklyn. That's a coach's decision there. Indiana, for the most part, pretty healthy at home. It was 11. It's now 12.5. Interesting spot here, BP, for these Pacers. Nothing really out of the ordinary here as far as the injury report goes, but that total has dropped from 229 down to 226.5, 227. What are you thinking here with the Nets and Pacers tonight?
Man, betting an under with Indiana can be uncomfortable, I suppose, just based on how they play. Obviously, near the league in tempo, they're not a good defensive team. They can score with the best of them. Although, of course, that game against the Lakers the other night was really low scoring. And we have seen the Pacers, at least recently, they are 6-2 to the under their last 8 games. It was a pretty impressive showing, honestly, against the Lakers the other night. It was their first game back after a 5-game trip. Usually that's a tough spot for a team, but Indiana, they win by double digits, win by 19 over the Lakers. Looking at the Pacers, the question, obviously, they're trying to hold on to a top 6 spot. I think for a team like that matters. They would probably want to avoid the play-in tournament. They wouldn't want to play a team like Miami or Philadelphia in a 1-game scenario. I'm not really interested in laying it with them double digits. I mean, you look, they did cover an 11-point spread against Detroit on the road at the start of that aforementioned road trip. And they were a 12-point favorite against Detroit here at home. But those are the only 2 times they've been a double-digit favorite since the break. Again, Brooklyn, Steve mentioned it when we were talking Atlanta and Chicago. They have really no chance. They haven't technically been eliminated, but they have no chance of catching Atlanta for that 10th and final spot. So this was an easy pass for me. My thought is, does Indiana, after a couple games now where they haven't scored very many points, do they get the offense going? And if they do, then Brooklyn is probably dead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that, but my goodness, Indiana is the definition of mediocrity here, Merrill, down this stretch here. What, 8-7, I think, maybe 8-8 straight up and against the number. They have not been good at all, but they do have, a couple of days rest on them here in Brooklyn, which is on the back-to-back. What do we do? 12.5. I'm kind of with BP here. I don't want to run to the window and lay this kind of number with the Pacers, although we know they're capable of doing it. A little bit concerned there.
Yeah, whenever you're laying these double digits, it's about not necessarily the bad team. It's about the better team. And are they focused like we talked about with Orlando? And they probably will be focused against Portland. And Portland's just not capable of covering 9 straight losses in a row, most by blowout fashion. But the Brooklyn Nets, granted, a win came against the Raptors and the Wizards and even the Bulls, but they're still 3-1 straight up their last 4 games. So obviously they're playing competitive basketball. And the Indiana Pacers alternated wins and losses their last 5 games. And the last win was against the Lakers. By the way, I loved that spot. That was a strong play for me on Friday. I was very close to being a 5% play, but I made it just a strong 4%. And they won the game by 19. I just thought that was a fantastic situation. So not going to give them too much credit for that big win. They lost the game before against the Bulls by 26. And as I said, they've alternated wins and losses the last 5. And they also have a look ahead with Brooklyn on deck this Wednesday. Now, one thing I have noticed with these quick home-and-home series or these quick rematch games, I usually do lean towards the better team in the first game because normally they come focused and sometimes they come a little complacent. So if the Pacers do win this game by margin, the better play is going to probably be Wednesday, Brooklyn at home to get the bounce backs. We'll keep a close eye on this result tonight. One other thing I'll point out is that Pacers currently sitting 6th, only a half a game ahead of Miami, but they're a game and a half behind Orlando and 2.5 behind New York to get home court. And I'll tell you what, you're better off sitting 6th than to move up to 5th because then you could avoid the Celtics until the conference finals. Now, granted, if you fall to 7th, you're going to have to play Milwaukee in the first round. But right now they're getting Cleveland in the first round, which is a winnable series. And then they would avoid Boston in the next round as well. So I don't know how much of that is factored in, but there's probably not a ton of motivation for Indiana right now being the double-digit favorite.
Yeah, no, it doesn't feel like that at all here. A win will be a win there, and there's really only do we really need to go 17 and it's moving too, which is funny. The Celtics and the Hornets right now, 219 and a half is what we are seeing now. Total as well. Boston on the road against Memphis. I'm trying to Jaylen Brown out. That's the only new news that I am seeing there. I mean, mostly for the Charlotte Hornets. Haven't they packed it in at this point here, BP? Maybe a team total over or under or first half. It just seems like that should be it with Boston from this point forward, right? There's really no point in laying that kind of ridiculous number, is there?
A revenge spot for the Celtics, Joe. They lost the only meeting this year with Charlotte. That was all the way back in November. My guess is they may not even remember that loss took place at this point. And the other issue with not wanting to lay points here with Boston, Joe, is, as we've talked about when we were talking about the Eastern Conference at large, they've sewed up home court. They have nothing to play for at this point. Absolutely nothing. They just want to get to the playoffs healthy. The issue with Charlotte is they just played yesterday, though. I wouldn't be running back the Hornets here. They played yesterday. They gave up 1.4 points per possession of the Clippers. That is just horrendous defense. It is the end of a long road trip for Boston. I don't know if that matters for them. So, yeah, team total, given what I just laid out about giving up 1.4 points per possession, Boston's team total, I believe I did the NBA, I did the morning show that we did. I had a big game breakdown. I did big game breakdown. I said to take the Celtics over their team total last week. That did come in. I think that would probably be the best way to look at the Celtics over their team total or nothing here, because the Hornets can't play defense and the Celtics, I don't know, maybe they just want to score a lot and get out of Dodge.
Yeah, team total, Merril. It seems to be the only way to look at with Boston these days with these monster numbers. Although you talked about it right a week ago, when you start getting these 14, 15, 16, 17 point, spreads here this time of year when you're playing a team that's obviously checked out. They usually cover, don't they?
So I went 3-0 yesterday on Sunday in the NBA. Both best bets, one and a free play one for the clients as well. I didn't use anything in the Charlotte Clipper game, but if you paid attention Friday when we did the show, I did say if the Clippers win that second straight game against Orlando, it might be a flat spot against a really bad Hornets team. And what happened? The Hornets 14-point home dog covered, only lost by 12. So yesterday was probably the better spot to play Charlotte as a big dog, as I'd mentioned on Friday's show. I've also pointed out that double-digit favorites the last month or so have been good. Ralph Michaels had that angle last week. It was basically a 50-50 play at home, but the road favorites laying double digits have been over a 70% play since 2018. Boston qualifies. Of course, they also qualified at Atlanta last week and lost outright. The difference, though, as we've talked about, is Atlanta is in the playoff race. They're a capable team. Charlotte is not. With that said, though, not only have the Celtics clinched the number one in the East already, they're 6 games ahead of Oklahoma City, 6.5 over Denver, 7 over Minnesota, with 8 games to go for the best record, which would get you home court in the NBA Finals, which is somewhat important. So they got to win like another 2 games, but they probably don't even have to win again. That would assume that Denver or one of those other teams runs the table. So they need like 1 or 2 more wins at most to lock it up. So maybe this is one of those spots where they know they're going to get a win, so they don't mail it in. So it'd be Boston or pass for me for that reason. They do have a little bit to play for still.
All right, I love the fact here. Just want to send a big shout out to the chat room here. And it's, is it Turtail? At Turtail, welcome in. You're new. I haven't seen you here before, but welcome in. And the fact that you have decidedly gone after Bryan Power for a comment he make, you now have carte blanche, my man. We give out gold cards here at WagerTalk. And you, my friend, for sticking it right to BP. You can come by anytime you want. No problem there. Are you going to read it now, BP, here? He wants to know about, he says, Brian, you lost me when you said that Phoenix doesn't care about playoffs or playing, and then said that their only concern is to stay healthy. What about playing 1 or 2 extra games in do-or-die Game 7 intensity? What does that have to do? If you either got to win it or you don't win it, what's the difference? Health doesn't matter, does it?
No, I mean, you would think theoretically the top 6 does matter, but I don't think I don't think that in the Suns' minds that's the biggest deal. Obviously, they would love to be a top 6 seed, but I think relative to some other teams, I don't think it matters as much with the Suns. I think the Suns feel that they could win that first play-in game and be just fine.
I happen to agree with you, but it was more fun just to call you out on the show and repeat what we had there. Yeah, no, I'm just saying it was much more enjoyable. Can we track that IP
address on that comment? Yes. I think it's in Florida, I believe. Yes. I'm hearing that comment came from Florida.
Just saying. Just saying. Yes. I don't think I would have been able to type it in that fast there. 828 Lawson says, I'm taking the Hornets on the money line. I really do want a piece of that brownie you're eating, 828 Lawson. That would be fantastic. I can see that not happening. And we also seem to be getting some questions about the Dallas Mavericks in here. Are the Dallas Mavericks, do you think they're just getting heated up here, Merril? Is Dallas a team that you're going to be looking once they get into the playoffs here? Is there a team that you're looking that can do some damage?
Yeah, I think Dallas is definitely dangerous. They've been playing their best basketball over the past month or so. We kind of felt like they were sleepwalking through the season for the most part this year, and then they've turned things on when it matters the most. So I'd be very hesitant playing a team like Dallas, not only because they're playing the best basketball of the year, but they also have a superstar in Doncic. And by the way, one of those best bets I mentioned I cashed yesterday was in that Mavericks-Rockets game. So Dallas is a play-on team. They've been very good against the spread. And if Doncic can stay healthy, man, you do not want to face him in an elimination game, in a one-and-done scenario. I mean, he's as good as anyone in the league, and he could take a game over, which is something you have to have in the postseason. And by the way, getting back to the Suns about if they care or not, I don't know if they care, because I think they're kind of going through the motions sometimes. But they're currently the number 8 seed in the West. We talked about the poll question. Philadelphia is the number 8 seed in the East. Guess who was the 8 seed last year when the regular season ended? Your Miami Heat, and they made it all the way to the finals there in that run. So we have seen teams from this play-in round get hot when they need to, and Phoenix has had guys in or out, obviously very dangerous when they're healthy, though. Beal, Booker, other guys. And then, of course, Philadelphia with Embiid. And by the way, Embiid is extremely important. If you just look at the metrics on and off the court, I talked about those earlier with Ingram, just off the chart, one of the most important players to any team in the league. That's why he has been the MVP and always will be in contention. There's 7 net points better offensively per 100, 5 points weaker defensively. So that's a 12-point difference per 100 possessions with him on and off the court this season. So if he is truly healthy, yes, they are a contender in the East.
Yeah, well, it's and by the way, the the poll question here, BP, about the return of Embiid and whether or not you think it makes the Sixers a real threat in the East. Getting closer to 70% here, 68% saying yes, hell yes, they're going to be with Maxey and company. I guess they don't have any real, there's no other injury concerns or anything along those lines. So Embiid, if he is good enough and can ramp it up here, a lot of folks seem to think that maybe, just maybe, the Sixers are somebody to consider. It's also being pointed out that Dallas, and do you like Dallas, BP, first and foremost? Because we're getting a whole lot of questions about tomorrow night, Dallas playing Golden State, which I think is an interesting matchup. But really, with a healthy Doncic and Kyrie, is that a train we want to get in front of?
I mean, they're the hottest team right now in the conference, 7 straight wins,
Yep.
And tying this into the earlier discussion about Phoenix, what I think is, we talked about being on the opposite side of the bracket from Boston for these teams in the East. I think if you're in the West, you want to avoid Denver as a first-round playoff opponent. I think that is important. When you're maybe going into the last game of the season, you just don't want to play the Nuggets in that first round. I think that's a battle-tested team. You look at I would be much more scared of them than OKC or Minnesota if I was in that 6 or 7 range. So, Dallas, look, the West is wide open this year. It absolutely is. I think it's as wide open as any conference is, maybe I can remember in recent years. I don't know. I mean, Denver isn't an overwhelming favorite. They would be the favorite. But, a lot of these teams, their point differentials are close. OKC and Minnesota, who metrically are the 2 best teams, have not done it before. They're younger teams that there are reasons to not necessarily be trustworthy. So sure, I think Dallas, if they get the right matchups, if they avoid Denver in the first round, anything could break their way. I mean, you need horses, obviously. And guys like Doncic and Kyrie are the kind of guys who can carry you to multiple series wins in this thing, no doubt.
Yeah, no, absolutely correct. And the chat room there, shout out to Matt Allen looking for TJ McConnell prop point over. He has hit in 6 of his last 7. If it ain't broke, Matt, don't fix it, especially against who they're playing tonight here. Also, Money brings up a good point here, and I don't know whether or not we're all on the same page, but Derek Lively has been absolutely money for Dallas, exactly the kind of player that they were missing. But is it going to be is anybody talking about the Clippers? Do we trust the Clippers just to get the hell? I mean, you talk about a team looking just to get to the finish line so we can start the playoffs. The Clippers are one of those teams, Merrill, and it seems like a lot of talk about some of these other teams out west, and we seem to forget what the Clippers are capable. Are you a big believer in flipping that switch?
We'll see. I'm not a big believer in Harden, but if you check the NBA future markets, the sports books are definitely afraid of the Clippers. In fact, right now there's only 4 teams in the single-digit range. Everybody else is like 14-1 or higher. Celtics are 2-1, Nuggets around 3-1, and then the Clippers and Bucks around 7-1. So the Clippers are definitely priced higher than their seed would be. By the way, Thunder around 15-1, and then you got to go down the list. You get Phoenix, Minnesota, Dallas, all at 25-1. So Minnesota has a chance to be the 1 seed, and they're like the 8th team on the list, whereas Dallas is right there with them, which once again shows how dangerous Dallas is. Clippers are a weird team. They pick up hard, and they struggled for like 5 games, and they had the best record in the league for 2 months. But they've really underachieved the last couple months, and I'm not just sure you can flip a switch, especially when you have what I consider a vastly overrated player, non-defensive player, and sometimes even a cancer. I hate using that word, but a distraction, we'll say, in the locker room and on the court. I think the the Harden honeymoon, is over. So I'd be leery of the Clippers. I definitely do not like them at 7-1. I'd much rather have a team like Dallas at 25-1. Minnesota metrically is a value at 25-1. They got to get Towns healthy, obviously. But I just don't feel like they have the pedigree and the experience, like Brian said, to get it done in a clutch 7-game series. So, I'm a little bullish on the Nuggets, bullish on the Celtics. I think they're the 2 teams to beat in both conferences until we see otherwise.
It's a good point being brought up there on our YouTube Shorts feed. Shout out to the Big M here, Money. He is pointing out, though, they do have BP. Say what you want about the Clippers, but they are, as far as depth comes, right? That's a pretty big bench here. They are kind of built for the playoffs, right? With that second wave they can have coming in. All the moves they made as long as Kawhi's healthy. I'm a little worried about Paul George not having a contract yet, and they're still going back and forth, no extension there. But this, in many aspects, could be the last hurrah here for this Clippers group as currently constructed. But depth shouldn't be an issue for them in the playoffs.
No, it shouldn't. And, again, we keep beating this horse. They've had playoff experience before, unlike in Oklahoma City or in Minnesota. I will point this out as we're taking a look at all these possible Western Conference contenders. Other than OKC, Minnesota, Denver, and New Orleans, no team in the West is more than a game above 500 against 500 or better competition. So, the Clippers are only 24 and 23 when they take on 500 better teams. Dallas is actually 22 and 25 straight, and those are straight up records. So, again, you have to put it into context. Were they healthy for a lot of those games? The regular season's a grind. Obviously, as Steve just mentioned, you just mentioned, Joe, the Clippers care more about what happens in mid-April and after than they do until we get there. And I think Dallas, it was probably the same as well. But, in terms of just flipping a switch, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that, these teams are just sort of 500 against 500 or better competition. Now, you look at the East, there aren't many teams better. Boston is by far and away the best team against teams that are 500 or better, 32 and 13. But I don't know. The Clippers, I guess. Again, it's all going to depend on how this breaks out, right? The seeding is, we know who the top three are going to be in the West. The Clippers, unless they really fall apart, I guess they're going to be number 4. They've got a 2-game lead over that. Not insurmountable, but we shall see, I guess, who they're Clippers versus Dallas, man. That'd be an interesting first-round matchup because by rule, only one could advance to the second round. So that would knock one of these teams out right off the rip. So, and I think would be beneficial to the other contenders.
I'll say, we've said it all season long. I'll say it again. I don't give a crap as long as Kawhi Leonard is healthy. Any team he's on is going to have a shot here to be absolutely ridiculous in the playoffs. The man is an absolute sniper, and he is really the only reason you can probably still hold out hope there. Because I'm with you, Merrill. I think Harden is. Yeah, we're on our way down. We are not on our way up here. Also, we've got $9 Monday on this April 1st, which means best bets locked and loaded here tonight. BP, what do you got rolling for us on your page at WagerTalk.com on this April 1st? Can you believe it?
Time flies when we're hanging out, doesn't it, Joe? I have 3 MLB plays. Enough. I hear you through all the show is almost over, Joe. That is what they're telling me in my ear. But first, I want to let the people know 3 MLB winners for just $9 available at my page. That is just $3 per play, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly. WT.buzz/BP. We swing for the fences tonight. Look for the 3-0 sweep. Just $9 to get on board these 3 plays for tonight.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here, Merrill. $9 Monday here. Very special April 1st here. And I know I heard you on of course, earlier, but you got yourself a $9 best bet locked and loaded as well?
Yeah, we're talking basketball, but baseball is great this time of year as well. First of all, number 1 in the NBA. I mentioned the 4-0 sweep this past weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I had 4 best bets. They all won. Now 55 and 35 on all NBA sides this year, up over 66 units, ranked number 1 in the NBA at WagerTalk.com. But don't forget about baseball. I've given out 4 baseball plays, 2 best bets, 2 bonus free plays. I've gone 3-1 this season. The only loss was a blown 6-4 lead in the 9th inning. Otherwise, we'd be a perfect 4-0. I've got a strong baseball best bet, a small favorite that I think is going to win in a blowout. It's a steamroller blowout, and it's just $9 because it's $9 Monday. No fooling on April 1st, and also a bonus free baseball play. So get both of those baseball plays, 1 for free, and then that strong best bet for just $9 Monday night. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com.
Great stuff there, Merrill. Big shout out to the Big M Money there hanging out with us. Wyatt Cole in the house. Guns Minimum also hanging out there. And, of course, Have is calling his shot right now, saying Clippers first-round exit. Oh, wow. Just like that. Just out. Bounce him. See ya. Harden and George always fold in the playoffs. That's again, that's why Kawhi is the only reason to hold out hope on that team there, because that man don't fold for anybody. Big shout out to Movers 225. Jeff over in Instagram. We certainly appreciate you guys. Don't forget, hit that thumbs up, hit the like button, guys, and don't forget to subscribe. Why? Well, because we have a whole lot of daily content coming your way each and every day across the sports betting landscape, whether it be the NBA. The playoffs will be here before we know it, whether it's the Final Four coming up this weekend. Also, I would highly encourage you to go check out right in the description. The link is in the description below. Our boy there, Mark Zinno, has got a best bet here that he broke down for you earlier today. Go check out that video. The link is in the description, guys. Go check out his big game breakdown, and you're going to want to hear what he's got to say about this best bet as he continues to roll. So make sure you click on that in the description. Check that link out. And finally, the final toll here for our poll question today. Does the return of Joel Embiid make the Sixers a real threat in the Eastern Conference? Those of you who joined us here on our YouTube page, 64% say yes, 36% say no. The YouTube Shorts crew also seems to not love the Sixers, actually, because this thing has been cratered down to 60% now. Yes, 40% no. So Embiid is due back tomorrow. We'll see what he looks like, obvious minute restrictions and everything that comes along that, but we'll see if there's any value in maybe fading the Sixers early on while Embiid gets his feet and his legs under him. You'll have to come back tomorrow and check it out. Again, we appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and more importantly, cash those tickets here tonight, guys. We'll talk to you again tomorrow for another afternoon update.